Anant, it's a pleasure talking to you as always. So, work from home or WFH was induced. It was a phenomenon that was brought upon us. We had no choice but to accept it. But when we talk about work 2.0, this is something that we have the opportunity to design. This is something that we can work towards, both man, woman, and machine, to create this new work environment and new socially driven or socially friendly work environment, which will obviously drive productivity or potentially drive productivity and take organizations literally to newer levels or reimagine them, as the theme of this conference is, to another level. So that's really what we'll try and talk about today. So as we kick that off, Anant, tell us, what does Work 2.0 mean to you? And how have you viewed this evolving landscape of work and workplace and organizations in that, particularly in the last 10 months?
So first of all, Govind, great to be talking to you. It is a topic that everybody on the planet is trying to figure out. So I don't think I'll have any pearls of wisdom that is far ahead of everybody else. But I'll at least give you my experience and what, at least based on all the conversations that I've had in the ecosystem in India, what I see, at least trend lines. What is clear is it's going to be a hybrid. It's not going to completely go back to where it was at one end. And it's also not going to remain of what it has been in the last 10 months. So none of the two dogmas are going to be the lampposts that we're going to work with. We're going to work with somewhere as a hybrid. But what's also clear, this hybrid is different for every company, for every team inside a company, and even for every location inside that team. The type of work process that you're on. It will be different for all. The second key aspect that we got to remember is we need social capital back. And social capital is really that feel that we had of our organization, of our co-workers, of the people that we worked with, of our customers who we went and shook hands with, how we tried to do any deals. So all of that is got to come back. We got to get that social capital back. So the hybrid is going to make sure that there will remain a large amount of tech-enabled capability that will be supporting this hybrid, as some people come back to work in office as they used to, while others find more flexible work arrangements as they did not have in the past, and they found that that is now much better for them than the past. So hybrid is a reality going forward. A number of companies are already on that path. They are trying different models of the hybrid as they have the opportunity during the COVID time still. And based on those experiments, whatever is really successful will evolve. What is certain is technology is here to stay to enable Work 2.0 a lot more than technology was part of it in Work 1.0 before the pandemic. So that's one key bit. The second bit is, I think, the overall focus on well-being and employee at the center, the working person at the center of how you design workspaces is going to change again significantly. And I'll give you a very simple example that I at least heard, and this really was powerful for me. I talked to somebody who has a hearing impairment, and this person said, the pandemic has been great for me because now I'm doing these meetings on Teams and I see the captions as people are speaking. So for me, I will now make sure that even in a physical meeting, I'll get them to log on to Teams and see those captions. So now you suddenly hear that and you say, why didn't we think of that before? It was always available, that optionality. So I think we've discovered new things around how each person will find a different equilibrium. We have to focus on well-being in a very different way as we design Work 2.0.
Right, and these are very good examples. So here you're saying that someone who was perhaps not part of the closed group got into it only because he or she had the ability to read what other people were saying because of a hearing impairment. Now, as you design a Work 2.4 world, 2.0 world, what else are we or could we be bringing in? One is people who are excluded. The other is maybe going into areas we never went before.
Yeah, and see, I think as we evolve into this space, two trend lines are going to be very significant in determining how Work 2.0 happens. And those two trend lines are the daily aspects of our lives. It's schools and healthcare. Because at the end of the day, the family as a unit and the workplace as a unit are merging today, and we are managing that whole the education and the healthcare in a very different environment today. As we go forward, the separation between the workplace and the home will also increase the more normalcy that you would see in the regular healthcare and in schools. So that's one trend line that is definitely going to determine how different people react to it, because they have different constraints. And the second bit I would just say is purely from a tech point of view. I think there is a lot more understanding of empathy that is needed in designing. So there's enough research done by neuroscientists now. When you're in front of a screen and how you're meeting, how does your brain react versus when you're in a room, how does it work? There are goodness and better things that you can do in either situation. How do you bring the best of that together to make it really powerful in the new situations?
Right, and you talked about social capital. It sounded to me, and do correct me, that it's almost like something we thought we could maybe do with less of, but now we realize, as 10 months into a kind of quasi lockdown environment, that we actually cannot ever do without it, and therefore we need to ensure that it's part of our lives, particularly our working lives.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I at least listened to Satya Nadella in April and May, and he coined this aspect for us. And he said, hey, listen, we can all feel good about the tech, which will continue to enable us as we go forward, but the social capital is critical. The water cooler conversations, the fact that you can lean in a meeting to the person on the right and the left and quickly do a quick chat, or see what's the reaction of another person in another part of the room. Those are very important things. You bump into people in an organization. That serendipity needs to happen as you build social capital. All of that is important. So there has to be a very purposeful method in the organizations that needs to be enabled, while you continue to retain some benefits of the last 10 months, which has been around how productive people could have been even when they were away from office.
Right. So, and the two critical aspects or pillars of Work 2.0 are obviously people and machines. I mean, machine in a very, very generic sense. So you've talked about people. Tell us about machines, and then I'll ask you about healthcare and education, the other two important aspects you talked about.
So I think very quickly, there's a lot of evolution that has happened. I can talk just from our own experience around the Teams platform. We are thinking very different problems today than we were 10 months back. The platform is now thinking about how do we make it as a complete canvas of something that you do work in, and not just, it was never intended to be just an audio video conference mechanism. It has been used like that in the beginning, but now people are saying this is the place where I do work. And therefore, the whole design of Work 2.0 enablement will need to have tech helping you in every bit. I talked about that little conversation that you could have with somebody in a meeting room. Now that's happening in chats on the side, and suddenly you're realizing you could only talk to the person on the left and the right. Now through chats, you can talk to all the 20 people who might be in the room one-on-one while a meeting is happening. So you can unlock many new things with tech that you couldn't do in the past.
Right. So let's talk about schools and healthcare. So what do you see happening there, and how is that connected with or linking to this new world of Work 2.0?
Yeah, so I'll start there. I think education and health have seen the most dramatic transformation that we can see at this point in time. And maybe I'll expand that also to see what other sectors are seeing that dramatic transformation as we go forward. Let me talk about healthcare first. I think telehealth is the dramatic discovery in a way that it actually works and it can be done at scale. Doctors are feeling more comfortable about it. The patients are feeling more comfortable about it. The entire supporting ecosystem is feeling more comfortable about it. So I think it will enable, and for a country like ours, where we've always had a perennial shortage of doctors per population, I would say this is such an enablement that we can leverage as we move out of the pandemic and think about telehealth becoming a central part of our healthcare delivery system. And even the laws will have to change. All of that will have to happen to support healthcare going forward. There is a lot of work that can be done in making it even more productive for the doctor and the patient, with tools getting embedded into the interaction that doctors and patients are having. Now, moving to education, another different paradigm that's happening, because more than anybody else, the students and the teacher interaction, again, the physicality of that is very, very critical. The students learn from each other in a class. That whole experience is very important to get that whole mind frame. But at the same time, I think everybody's learned that with these tools today, you can really personalize education for every student, even while the student is in the class. So I'm taking that analogy of the meeting into the classroom. You can still be physically together, but be doing different things at different paces as you go along in a classroom or when you're not in the classroom. So to me, those two are very, very big deltas that have happened during this last 10 months. The other areas where I feel there's going to be, again, a transformation as we look forward, I would say is banking and financial services, especially in India. I think the banking sector in India really took that big leap in the last 10 months to say, hey, listen, this works. Let's go leverage technology. Contactless banking works. And therefore, we are really now moving towards the cloud-led data and AI capabilities inside banks very significantly today, which again was a gray area. Another sector that I would call out that is really, really transforming at this point in time is the whole commerce. The e-commerce, of course, has been a path for everybody to even get the basic necessities on a daily basis. There will be an omni-channel commerce, entertainment kind of change that's going to happen as we go forward. And finally, governance. Our interactions with the government have been digital over the last 10 months. And I would say the government has been far more connected in a very figurative manner with a larger population in the last 10 months. So I think if you put all of these trend lines together of telehealth, of education, of commerce and entertainment, of the governance, and you talk about the banking and financial services, we are talking about a lot of transformation.
Right, and let's pick a few to see the opportunities that could be, particularly for those who are watching. And let's maybe begin with health, and maybe you can jump to either banking and financial services or education, or for that matter, even governance. So, what are the areas where you see across these four verticals where the biggest problems are yet to be solved? In telemedicine, you talked about better interaction, for instance. And similarly, in education, you talked about this hybrid thing. You said, how do you personalize education even while people are in their classrooms? So that, I'm assuming, leads to a fresh set of opportunities. And governance, the government usually is a laggard when it comes to these things, but this is an opportunity to get ahead. And how could it do it? So your pick.
So first of all, as you said, what links the innovation across all of these verticals? I think if there are two defining trend lines that we have observed in the last 10 months, which are going to stay and accelerate as we get out of the pandemic, the number one is a cloud-based data and AI-led innovation. Data and AI has become central to every one of our lives. And I can just take this analogy for you. 10 months back, for people to understand what logarithmic graphs meant and therefore how they can be projected forward and how you can see the different predictions coming and how machine learning is really shaping it because it's happening in some other part of the world or some other area that looks similar, we became so comfortable with it. All of us were understanding this a lot better. So data and AI, and that too led by a very significant amount of cloud-based data capability, is going to be very critical in all of these sectors. You look at education, healthcare, governance, you look at e-commerce and entertainment, across them. And this cloud-led data and AI is going to be the big momentum for innovation. A lot more needs to be done here. But the second area that I would say, the second trend line, that really opened up our eyes during this time is trust. So suddenly people realized, now I'm talking to somebody, I don't know where this person is, I don't know who else is watching me, I don't know where this data is going, what can I trust, what can I not trust, and also about privacy, about security, cyber security. So we heard so much around during this time the hackers were pretty active, targeting very, very critical installations and organizations. So you suddenly realize that these two trend lines are in a way, if done well, can be very, very synchronous and can create a lot of innovation. But if they're out of sync, then they can actually just stop organizations in their tracks. So if you ask me where is the innovation, I would really say drive both at the same time, because one has a very significantly uplifting effect, cloud-led data and AI, and the second one can really stop you in your tracks if not done right. So my call out will be both have to be done simultaneously in each of these sectors as you look for opportunities.
Right. So can you give us an illustration? So when you talk about cloud and AI, what is like a problem area or something that you think these two forces can help resolve? And really speaking from an Indian context and in the Indian product space.
No, so I've had this conversation with one of the leading surgeons in the country. He thinks very well about this and very celebrated. He actually explained this to me and he said, hey, Anant, if you look at medical science, there's a very definable number of actual diseases, a number of symptoms, the real cures, and the amount of tests. They're very, very countable. And you can truly bring that together with the power of data and AI to have diagnosis of different permutations and combinations. So the real sort of job of the doctor should evolve, not in finding the answer, but in sharpening the answer and also really having the empathetic connect with the patient to truly understand if everything is being captured or not. And making that diagnosis therefore better, and also then landing that with the patient, where the patient believes it's not just the right answer, it's also I feel good about it because the doctor is telling me the right thing about it. So the whole patient-doctor relationship can evolve if we really bring in the data and AI capability very significantly. I'll give you a very simple example. We ran this over the last 4 years in the case of eyes and running cataract surgeries in India. And we ran, and India is blessed with more than 1 billion pairs of eyes. So we have lots of data points that you can understand. Lots of cataract surgeries happen in the country. And we observed that if you really apply this power of data and AI-led cloud innovation, the success rate of those surgeries goes up dramatically. Because as soon as the patient data is fed in, the modeling can give you at least a path of what the treatment should be, and the doctor can look at it and then change the treatment, of course, because the doctor is the final arbiter on what it should be. But in most cases, we found that the doctor was then able to really land that in the right way for the patient, and therefore success rates went up dramatically. Now, that is where I was saying these two are very important, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with very sensitive patient data. The trust has to be there in the patient and the doctor that this data is private, it's secure, it's not going to be misused in any way. And also in the future, it will only come and help the patient in the right way. So those two things are very, very important if they work in consonance, and they can solve a lot of medical problems.
Right. Trust is an important element. We all shop, we engage with the internet, and oftentimes we take things for granted because we somehow assume that, things can be trusted until we, of course, discover that they can't. So the onus this time perhaps is higher on technology to deliver trust or to give a sense of trust. And which means companies, organizations, individuals in the technology space have to work harder. So, and I'm really trying to ask you, what therefore are the opportunities to build that trust and elements of trust or threads of trust, so that all of what we talked about in achieving Work 2.0 becomes easier?
So a few things I would say, and I think the entire planet is discovering this. The first thing I would say, which is at least from the tech world, it is clearly understood that all of security, privacy, trust-based elements that you create in any kind of tech capability are not bolt-on. They should be built in. They should be intrinsic. So you can't go and say, let me first innovate very quickly, go create something, start it up, and then when I see problems, then I will make it better on trust. Your business model, your technology, the way you handle the data should all be right up front, ingrained in the principles of trust. So that's the first thing that has to change for all the innovation that's happening. The larger companies, I think, have got on to that much faster, as we see a lot of the startup innovation happening in India. And my call out to all the entrepreneurs listening to this is, don't wait for this to be asked as a question to you. Make this as your USP in terms of driving trust as a key aspect of whatever you're offering to your customer. The second aspect around it, as I would call it out, is also regulation. I think we are seeing around the world that these are very, very new areas. The GDPR work that happened in Europe has been a beacon for a number of geographies around the planet now to see and do something. India itself has its Data Act coming up. So I think those are important milestones that will come in, and they need to enable with a very, very open format how the right trust-based work can happen for innovation.
Right, Anant, you wrote a note to your colleagues where you talked about trust, empathy, and learning, and finally you said purpose. So let me ask you about purpose. Do you think purpose, in order to achieve, whether to achieve Work 2.0 or essentially finally address your customer, your stakeholders, is changed now? Is it a new purpose? Should we be redefining our purpose?
So very, very good question, Govind. And I would first just fall back on what we do on a daily basis, at least in our company. We have a very simple mission to empower every person, every organization on the planet to achieve more. There is no technology in the mission. The mission is very, very simple. Can we make everybody achieve their purpose? And to me, that's where we were pivoted. Inside the 10 months of the pandemic. I'll give you very simple examples. A lot of my colleagues ask the question, what are we doing? Should we be just out on the street trying to help somebody? What are we trying to get done here? But I think everybody understood that we are enabling the healthcare frontline workers right now to be able to talk to patients. We are enabling teachers to be able to teach the students. We are enabling the governments to be able to govern. We are enabling the chief executives and the organizations to be able to talk to each other and deliver. So our purpose was very clear that everybody's out to get their own purpose. Let's enable that. I realized that became such an invigorating, energizing thought for us over the last 10 months. So I think the purpose doesn't necessarily need to be the same for everyone. It's part of, you're a cog in the wheel, and therefore you play a specific role, and that is the purpose. That is very, very critical. But if it's not clear to you, then it'll be very difficult to even work through a time like this.
Right. Almost the last question, Anant. Human nature is such that we will tend to pull back in or to comfort zones. And maybe 10 months is not long enough a time to cause us to shift too many things, or at least dramatically shift too many things. Is that something that we should fight, or as we move towards Work 2.0, or should we adapt and maybe even give in if human nature wants to go back to things as it were?
So I'll maybe even bring in another aspect here as you talk about this, Govind. I think each of us has been in a training boot camp over the last 10 months. We've picked up new skills. I can tell I have picked up new digital skills that I did not have 10 months back. Now, those digital skills are part of me today. They're not going to go away. And I'm sure I'm going to continue to use many of those, even when I am maybe going back into certain situations. And
what's one skill you've picked up, Anant?
So I would very simply say that the fact that I could collaborate in a very different way simultaneously with a lot of people while doing the work at the same time, that capability and using all the aspects that were available to me, I didn't even know that what all was available as capabilities to me. So now I'm very comfortable. I don't need help to get going on that. And I've talked to enough CEOs who said, hey, listen, I had 10 people helping me get this done in the past. It's simple. I can do it myself now. And in fact, some CEOs have told me, hey, Anant, next time don't take a flight to Bombay to just come and meet me. It's better to do this 30 minutes face-to-face on this Teams call. We actually get a lot done during this time. Now, to your point, the CEOs themselves are saying we get better FaceTime with each other. And we should definitely meet, but we should meet for more defined things. Maybe a meal. Sharing a meal together is very important in the future. So I think that will change as we go forward and as we work with each other. The digital skills, I think, is the defining change in each one of us. And going forward, if tech is going to be the big enabler for everybody, for every entrepreneur listening here, I would say if you can participate in skilling, and if you can create more capabilities around skilling, you will be in the slipstream that will definitely flow in the future.
Right, and finally, you talked about learning in that note to your colleagues, and how that 2020 has been a year of learning. I know we've just started 2021, but what would you say 2021 looks like?
So I'll tell you where my biggest learning was in 2020. I think it was around vulnerability. The fact that you were quite transparent to everyone who was looking at you. And we do carry our personas that may have been different at work and different in our home situations, and they kind of coalesced and came together in 2020. As I go into 2021, I hope I don't let them go far apart. Because there was a very strong connection that we created with each other as human beings during 2020. So I want to maintain that as we go forward in 2021. I definitely feel, I think the fact that we got a lot of time with our loved ones and some families together, that should remain in 2021. I always say the one thing that I will regret about 2020 maybe in the rest of my life is the time I got with my family. I may not get that same time ever again in the future. So as I look forward to 2021, I'm very hopeful. I'm very, very optimistic that new things will happen. The vaccination will happen. We'll get on with a lot of things in life that we couldn't in 2020. But I do hope we carry those moments from 2020 that were the glass half full moments.
Right, and that indeed will be a part of Work 2.0, the most beautiful and poignant moments with family, with friends, mostly family, close ones and dear ones. And we also have learned what to treasure and maybe what not as we go and we evolve this new landscape, which will have the best of all worlds. Anant, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your thoughts so candidly. And it was, as always, was a pleasure to talk to you.
Absolutely my pleasure, Govind. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Awesome. Good. Hey,
great.
Take care, Chief.
See you around. Yeah. Bye. See you soon.